You see those paintings of knights in shining armor charging into glorious battle? Medieval kings deciding the fate of empires with honor and nobility? That is not what happened at Jaffa. August 5th, 1192. Richard Plantagenet wakes up barefoot. 17 mounted knights, 54 total if you count the ones without horses, 2,000 crossbowmen who are actually Italian sailors, and across the sand, 7,000 cavalry. Maybe 14,000 infantry behind them, Saladin's entire army. This is not a fair fight. This is not heroic. This is Richard gambling every remaining card because he has no other choice, and somehow it works. And on July 27th, 1192, Saladin moves first. Richard is in Acre planning to sail home. His crusade is collapsing. The French left months ago. Philip Augustus went back to France in August, 1191, after Acre fell. The Germans are scattered after Frederick Barbarossa drowned crossing a river in Anatolia on June 10th, 1190. Richard has tried twice to reach Jerusalem. Got within 12 miles at Beit Nuba in December 1191. Turned back, tried again in June 1192. Got close enough to see the walls. Turned back again, not because of cowardice, because of math. Jerusalem cannot be held. Supply lines are too long. Saladin controls the interior. Even if Richard takes the city, he cannot defend it. His advisors tell him this. The military orders tell him this. Richard accepts it. But accepting failure and going home are not the same thing. On July 30th, the walls are breached at the Jerusalem gate. Saladin's troops pour through. The defenders fall back to the citadel. The only strong point left, a priest swims from the citadel toward Richard's ships when they appear on August 1st. Tells Richard the citadel still holds. That is enough. 55 knights follow him into the surf, several hundred infantry, 2,000 Genoese and Pisan crossbowmen. They are outnumbered 10 to 1 minimum. The Muslim troops on the beach see ships. They see Richard's banner. They panic. Not because of the numbers they can see, because of what they think is coming behind. Saladin's men flee 5 miles inland before Saladin rallies them. The Christian prisoners who surrendered 3 days ago grab weapons from their captors, join the fight. Jaffa is retaken in hours. August 1st, 1192. Richard loses 2 men in the assault, according to contemporary accounts. The Itinerarium Peregrinorum et Gesta Regis Ricardi, compiled by Richard de Templo in the early 1220s from eyewitness sources, records this. Baha al-Din ibn Shaddad, Saladin's Qadi al-Askar, his military judge, who was appointed in October 1188 and stayed at Saladin's side through the entire crusade, writes his account. Al-Nawadir al-Sultaniya wal-Mahasin al-Yusufiya, The Rare and Excellent History of Saladin, published in English translation by D.S. Richards for Ashgate in 2002. Both Christian and Muslim sources agree. Richard retakes Jaffa on August 1st in an amphibious assault that catches Saladin completely off guard. Published by William Stubbs for the Rolls series in 1864 and translated by Helen Nicholson for Ashgate in 1997, and Baha al-Din ibn Shaddad's biography of Saladin, written between 1193 and 1228, based on his personal observations as Saladin's judge and companion from 1188 onward. Now back to the information. They were routed by a landing party. Saladin cannot let this stand. Scouts report back. Richard is outside Jaffa with a tiny force. The walls are breached. The city is indefensible. Saladin masses his army. 7,000 cavalry confirmed by both Britannica's entry on the battle, updated November 19th, 2024, and multiple primary accounts. Perhaps twice that in infantry and auxiliaries. They move at night. August 4th into August 5th. Plan is simple. Dawn attack, overwhelming force, end this. They grab shields, they grab lances. Richard has 80 knights total. Only 17 have horses. Most of the mounts drowned when ships went down earlier, or were taken by Saladin's troops when they held Jaffa. 63 knights fight on foot, mixed with 2,000 infantry and crossbowmen, against 7,000 cavalry minimum, probably 14,000 to 20,000 total forces. The walls are breached. A siege means slow death. He forms a line, shield wall. Each knight kneels on one knee. Left hand holds the shield upright. Right hand thrusts the lance butt into the sand. Spear point angled toward the enemy, creates a hedge of steel. The crossbowmen position themselves in pairs between and behind the knights. One shoots, one reloads, rotating fire, maximum rate. The Muslims attack in waves. First charge hits the line. Crossbow bolts rip through light armor, kill horses, kill riders. The charge breaks, second wave, same result. The bolts punch through at close range. Baha al-Din notes his own forces were lightly armored. The Crusader crossbows had devastating effect. 700 Muslims die, 1,500 horses. These numbers appear in multiple sources. The Britannica entry lists them, the Itinerarium records them. Baha al-Din acknowledges heavy losses. Richard countercharges. 17 mounted knights. He leads them personally. No enemy is safe within his reach. The itinerarium describes him as fighting like a raging lion. Baha al-Din records that Richard rode along the entire length of the Muslim army, from right to left with lance in hand, and not one soldier left the ranks to attack him. Saladin was wroth and left the battlefield in anger. This is a direct contemporary account from Saladin's companion, not Crusader propaganda. The Muslim chronicler admits it. This happens repeatedly through the day. Richard penetrates so deeply into enemy lines that his own men lose sight of him. They fear he is killed. Then he emerges, circle of dead around him, blood on his sword, his armor dented, but alive. Gallops back to Jaffa, rides through the gates with a small party, kills enemy soldiers in the streets, then rides to the beach, shames the Genoese back into the fight, returns to his battle line for the next wave. This is recorded in both the itinerarium and referenced in Baha al-Din's account, which mentions Muslim troops briefly entering the city before being driven out. Challenges Richard to single combat. Both sides stop fighting to watch. Richard accepts. Single blow, sword strike, cleaves through the champion's neck and right shoulder. Head and shoulder fly off, while the horse and the rest of the blood-spurting body continue forward. The watching armies are stunned. This story appears in the itinerarium and was repeated in medieval accounts. Whether exact details are embellished is debated by historians, but the overall tenor of Richard's personal combat prowess is confirmed across sources. Al-Adil respects Richard's fighting skill enough to ensure the contest remains fair. Richard accepts the horses. The itinerarium claims he later repaid Al-Adil magnificently. This cross-cultural moment of respect appears in multiple chronicles. Stops the flanking attempt cold. By evening, Saladin's forces are shattered. Morale is broken. They retreat. Saladin cannot regroup them. The battle is over. August 5th, 1192. Final tally. Crusader casualties, 2 knights dead, many wounded. Muslim casualties, 700 dead, 1,500 horses lost. These numbers appear in the Britannica article, updated November 24, citing historical records. The itinerarium records similar figures. This is not exaggeration. This is documented massacre. They were 14,000 against fewer than 2,500. They lost, not narrowly, decisively. Research by Thomas Wagner and Piers Mitchell, published in Crusades Journal, Volume 10 in 2011, analyzes the symptoms, possibly scurvy, possibly trench mouth, possibly something else entirely. The siege conditions at Acre were apocalyptic. 2 years of blockade, bodies piling in ditches, river running red, flies bringing dysentery and possibly malaria, men eating horses, eating grass, gnawing dog bones, a week's pay for 1 egg. Summer 1192, another epidemic strikes, febris emetridia. Richard is dangerously ill for nearly 3 months. His men fear for his life. This is documented in multiple chronicles, including Roger of Hovden's Chronica, written around 1192. Richard is trying to hold a crusade together while fighting off diseases that kill more crusaders than Saladin's armies ever do. Christopher Tyerman, crusade historian, estimates death rates at 30% for nobles, 70% for common soldiers. Disease is the real enemy. The Third Crusade launched in 1189 to retake Jerusalem after Saladin captured it. October 2nd, 1187. 3 kings responded: Frederick Barbarossa of Germany, Philip Augustus of France, Richard of England. Frederick drowned June 10th, 1190. Philip went home August, 1191. Richard remains, but he is not enough. Philip Augustus is attacking Richard's lands in France. The messages are urgent. Richard needs to go home, but he cannot leave with nothing, cannot abandon the crusade entirely. So he negotiates. Kingdom of Jerusalem restored as a narrow coastal strip. Ascalon's fortifications demolished. Town returned to Saladin. Jerusalem remains under Muslim control, but Ayyidite Christian pilgrims granted safe passage, unarmed access to holy sites, Church of the Holy Sepulchre, Bethlehem, Nazareth, free movement for merchants in both territories, prisoner exchange without ransom. Saladin is exhausted. His treasury is depleted. Years of war. His emirs are restless. Jaffa broke their confidence. Richard is sick. His throne is threatened. His army is dying from disease. Jerusalem is unattainable. The treaty is the best either can achieve. It is not victory, it is survival. This one establishes genuine peace. Trade resumes. Pilgrims travel safely. The coastal crusader states stabilize. Acre becomes the new capital. The kingdom survives another century. All because Richard and Saladin recognize reality at Jaffa. Is captured by Leopold of Austria near Vienna in December 1192. Leopold has not forgotten Richard insulting him at Acre. Tearing down his banner, Leopold imprisons Richard, then sells him to Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI. The ransom is enormous, 150,000 marks. England pays it. Richard is released in February 1194. He spends the last 5 years of his life fighting in France. dies April 6th, 1199. Crossbow bolt to the shoulder while besieging Chalice-Chabrol Castle. The wound becomes infected. Gangrene. Richard dies at age 41. Never achieved his crusading vow, never retook Jerusalem, but he saved the Crusader states, and he won Jaffa. 17 with horses, 2,000 crossbowmen and infantry. Saladin has 7,000 cavalry, maybe 20,000 total. The numbers do not work. Any military calculation says retreat. Get inside Jaffa, hold the citadel, wait for reinforcement. But Richard knows the walls are breached. A siege is slow death, so he does the opposite. Forms a line in the open, makes himself the target. Saladin's troops expect crusaders to defend from fortifications, to use walls and towers. Richard gives them a line of kneeling knights and crossbowmen in the sand. No retreat, no fallback position. Win or die. The audacity shakes the Muslim cavalry. They expect a fortress. They get a hedge of spears backed by crossbow volleys that punch through armor at close range. The first charges fail. Horses will not impale themselves on lances. Crossbow bolts kill riders before they reach the line. Each failed charge demoralizes the next wave. Because attacking means dying, the Crusaders are desperate. They have no escape. They fight with the fury of men with nothing to lose. The Muslim cavalry have everything to lose. They have won the war. Jerusalem is theirs. Why die now charging into a death trap? So they hesitate, and hesitation becomes retreat. He knows when to attack and when to defend. At Jaffa, he creates a tactical situation where the larger force cannot bring its numbers to bear. The narrow frontage means Saladin cannot surround the Crusaders without exposing his flanks to the sea and the city. The crossbowmen negate cavalry charges. The countercharges by Richard's mounted knights disrupt any Muslim attempt to regroup. It is brilliant improvisation under impossible conditions. The sources for Jaffa are remarkably detailed. The Itinerarium Peregrinorum et Gesta Regis Ricardi is the most comprehensive Christian account, written in Latin, compiled in the early 1220s by Richard de Templo, a canon of Holy Trinity Augustinian Priory in London. He drew from at least 2 lost contemporary memoirs. The first part is similar to the Latin continuation of William of Tyre. The second part closely parallels Ambroise's L'Histoire de la Guerre Sainte, an Anglo-Norman poem by a jongleur who accompanied the crusade. Multiple manuscript copies survive. William Stubbs edited it for the Rolls series in 1864. Helen Nicholson translated it in 1997 for Ashgate. Her translation includes exhaustive notes comparing the Itinerarium with other contemporary sources, both Christian and Muslim. The Muslim side has Baha al-Din ibn Shaddad, born in Mosul March 6, 1145, studied Quran, Hadith, and Islamic law, moved to the Nizamiya Madrasa in Baghdad, returned to Mosul as a professor around 1173. In 1188, returning from Hajj, he met Saladin. Saladin had read his treatise, The Virtues of the Jihad, was impressed, appointed Baha al-Din Qadi al-Askar, judge of the army. Baha al-Din remained at Saladin's side from October 1188 until Saladin's death, March 4th, 1193. Eyewitness at Acre, at Arsuf, at Jaffa. His biography of Saladin, Al-Nawadir al-Sultaniya wal-Mahasin al-Yusufiyya, was written after 1193, based on notes and direct observations. A manuscript dated July 1228 survives. DS. Richards translated it into English for Ashgate in 2002. This is primary source material from Saladin's inner circle. 1,500 horses lost. 2 Crusader knights dead. Many wounded. Baha al-Din admits Richard rode unchallenged through the Muslim lines. Admits Saladin left in anger. This is not propaganda. This is history. 3-year truce becomes 26-year peace. Christian pilgrims travel to Jerusalem safely for over 2 decades. The Crusader states recover. Acre thrives as a commercial hub. Genoese and Pisan merchants profit enormously from trade with Muslim territories. The treaty creates stability neither side expected. He is 55 or 56, exhausted from years of campaigning. The Third Crusade broke his health. His sons divide his empire. Al-Afdal gets Damascus. Al-Aziz gets Egypt. Al-Zahir gets Aleppo. The Ayyubid dynasty continues, but the unity Saladin created fractures. The treaty holds because his successors honor it, and because the Crusader states are not worth fighting over. The coast is defensible. Jerusalem is secure. Neither side gains from breaking the peace. At Acre in August 1191, when Saladin delays the first ransom payment, Richard orders 2,700 Muslim prisoners executed, marches them outside the city walls, slaughters them in view of Saladin's army. Saladin responds by killing his Christian prisoners. The massacre at Acre haunts both leaders. The rest in France or the Crusade. He sells offices and titles to fund the expedition, leaves England in his brother John's hands. John immediately plots to seize the throne. When Richard is captured, returning from crusade, John tries to keep him imprisoned, offers Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI money to hold Richard longer. This is Richard's own brother. The ransom nearly bankrupts England. 150,000 marks is 2 to 3 times annual royal revenue. Richard does not care. He fights Philip Augustus in France until a crossbow bolt kills him in 1199. Desperate men fight harder. He knows Saladin's cavalry are cautious. They have won the war. Cautious men hesitate. He exploits this, creates a tactical situation that amplifies Crusader strengths and exposes Muslim weaknesses. It works? Barely. 2 dead Crusaders, 700 dead Muslims. The numbers should be reversed, but they are not. Jaffa proved Crusaders can still win battles. Saladin cannot ignore this. The treaty reflects balance. Christians get the coast, Muslims get Jerusalem, pilgrims get access, merchants get trade. Both sides get peace. It is pragmatic. It is realistic. It survives because it serves both sides. Win battles through shock and momentum. Jaffa shows the counter. Kneeling infantry with lances planted create an immovable hedge. Crossbowmen behind them slaughter charging cavalry. Small mobile units of knights countercharge to disrupt enemy formations. Richard combines these elements perfectly. The result is 7,000 cavalry beaten by 17 mounted knights and 2,000 infantry. Romans used similar formations. Julius Caesar at Pharsalus in 48 BC placed infantry with spears against Pompey's cavalry. Richard adapts this. The itinerarium specifically mentions Richard deployed his infantry with 2 spears each, inspired by Caesar's tactics. Medieval commanders study Roman military history. Richard applies those lessons at Jaffa. Baha al-Din notes Crusader, crossbow bolts penetrating Muslim light armor easily. He describes seeing Crusader infantry with multiple arrows stuck in their padded armor still marching. But crossbow bolts kill horses and riders alike. At close range, they are devastating. The rate of fire in pairs, one shooting while one reloads, maintains constant pressure. Cavalry cannot close the distance. This makes the hedge of spears even more effective. Saladin's mistake is attacking at all. Jaffa, on August 5th, is not strategically necessary. He retook the city July 30th, then lost it August 1st when Richard landed. Saladin could have withdrawn, let Richard hold Jaffa. The Crusader army is sick, depleted, demoralized. Winter is coming. Richard will have to leave. Instead, Saladin attacks to restore his emir's confidence after the rout on August 1st. It backfires catastrophically. Not only does he lose again, the defeat is more humiliating. The first time he was surprised by amphibious assault. The second time he has overwhelming numbers and still loses. His emirs lose faith, his army loses morale. The Treaty of Jaffa follows inevitably. At Arsuf, on September 7th, 1191, he maintains defensive formation while marching. The Hospitallers charge without orders. Richard has to commit his whole army to support them. He wins, but it is not his choice. At Jaffa, August 1st, he has no choice. The citadel will fall. He attacks. At Jaffa, August 5th, he has no choice. Saladin's army will overrun him. He forms the line. Richard fights when necessary. Otherwise, he maneuvers, fortifies, negotiates. This is pragmatic generalship. Not the chivalric ideal, but more effective. Even if they take the city, the Crusaders cannot defend it through winter. Richard accepts this. It is the right decision militarily, but it destroys his crusading vow. Taking Jerusalem is the whole purpose. Richard came to fulfill that vow, cannot do it. This failure haunts him. The kingdom of Jerusalem collapsed. Only Tyre held out. Pope Gregory VIII called for a new crusade. 3 kings responded: Frederick Barbarossa, Philip Augustus, Richard. Frederick's army was huge, probably 30,000 to 50,000 men. He defeated the Seljuk Turks in Anatolia. Then he drowned. His death June 10th, 1190, breaks German morale. Most go home. A remnant reaches Acre. Philip and Richard arrive by sea in 1191. They besiege Acre for 2 years before capturing it. July 12th, 1191. Then Philip goes home. Richard continues, wins at Arsuf, takes Jaffa, fortifies Ascalon, but never takes Jerusalem. The treaty, September 2nd, 1192, ends the crusade without achieving its goal. The coast from Tyre to Jaffa is secured. Christian pilgrims can visit Jerusalem. This is significant. In 1187, after Hattin, the Crusader states were on the edge of extinction. By 1192, they are stabilized. Acre becomes a thriving capital. The kingdom of Jerusalem endures another century. Falls finally in 1291 when Mamluks take Acre. But that is 100 years after Richard. 100 years, the Crusader states exist because of the treaty Richard negotiated after Jaffa. Bravery bordering on madness. This is what medieval audiences want in a king. Richard gives it to them. The story of sending Richard fresh horses during battle becomes famous. Medieval Europe respects Saladin even as an enemy. This is unusual. Most Muslim leaders are demonized in Christian chronicles. Saladin is portrayed as noble, honorable, worthy opponent. This reputation comes partly from moments like gifting horses to Richard. Scurvy, Arnaldia or Leonardi, fevers. The siege of Acre alone kills thousands on both sides over 2 years. The march from Acre to Jaffa in September 1191 takes constant harassment from Saladin's forces. Men die daily. At Jaffa, in July 1192, the garrison of 5,000 loses hundreds in 3 days of fighting before Richard arrives. The August 5th battle adds 700 Muslim dead to the toll. Disease continues after the treaty. Richard is sick through August and September, nearly dies, leaves in October before he recovers fully. England is financially crippled. Richard does not care. He fights in France until he dies in 1199, spends the ransom money on warfare against Philip Augustus. The Angevin Empire, the lands Richard inherits from his father Henry II, begins to crumble. John loses most of it after Richard dies. The Crusaders starve. Richard either dies or surrenders. The Crusader states collapse. There is no treaty. Saladin controls the entire coast. The Third Crusade ends in total failure. Instead, Richard gambles, forms the line, wins the battle, forces Saladin to negotiate, saves the Crusader states, changes history. Modern Tel Aviv expands over the ancient site. Excavations in the 20th century found Crusader-era fortifications. The citadel Richard's garrison defended in July 1192. Walls breached by Saladin's forces, repaired by Richard after August 1st, demolished again in negotiations before the treaty. No mass graves from the battles. The dead were buried quickly in summer heat. The exact battlefield location for August 5th is uncertain, somewhere east of the city walls near Richard's camp. The sand and terrain have changed over 8 centuries. The narrative of Jaffa is reconstructed from these texts. Modern historians compare them, look for where they agree, where they differ, build the most accurate picture possible. The core facts are solid. Richard landed August 1st, retook Jaffa in hours. Saladin attacked dawn August 5th. Richard formed a defensive line with 80 knights and 2,000 infantry, repelled 7,000 cavalry. Casualties were 700 Muslim dead, 1,500 horses lost, 2 Crusader knights dead. The treaty was signed September 2nd. These facts appear across multiple independent sources. This forces Saladin to negotiate. The treaty gives Richard and Saladin both what they need. Richard gets the coast secured and pilgrim access to Jerusalem. Saladin gets to keep Jerusalem and the interior. Both can claim success to their own people. The 26-year peace proves the treaty works. Spent most of that time on crusade. He has won battles, Acre, Arsuf, but not the war. Jerusalem is out of reach. Disease is killing his army. His throne back home is threatened. He is sick himself, nearly died twice from illness. At Jaffa, he faces impossible odds. 17 knights with horses against 7,000 cavalry. Does he hesitate? The sources say no. Baha al-Din describes Richard forming the line immediately. The itinerarium says he advanced barefoot in his haste. No elaborate preparations, no long speeches, just instant action. Form the line, kneel, plant the lances, position the crossbowmen, face the enemy. This is a man who has spent his entire life in warfare. The decision is instinctive. Rescue missions when knights fall, riding through enemy lines alone, challenging champions to single combat. This is not how kings are supposed to fight. They command from safe positions. Richard fights like a common knight. Baha al-Din's account makes this clear. Richard rides along the entire length of the Muslim army with lance in hand. Not one soldier attacks him. They are afraid of one man. This is reputation as a weapon. Richard's fighting skills are so well known that Saladin's cavalry fear him personally. Mutual recognition of martial skill. Honor transcending faith. This happens throughout the Crusades. Richard and Saladin never meet face to face, but they correspond, negotiate, respect each other. The treaty reflects this mutual respect. Richard does not linger. Once the agreement is signed, he returns to Acre, organizes his departure, boards ship, sails west, never looks back, never returns. The Holy Land is behind him. England and France are ahead. The crusade, his life's ambition, is over. Not accomplished, but concluded. There is a difference. He tries to travel overland incognito, is recognized near Vienna in December 1192. Leopold of Austria arrests him, hands him to Henry VI. Richard spends over a year imprisoned. From December 1192 to February 1194, England scrapes together the ransom, 150,000 marks, 23 tons of silver, 70% of England's annual revenue. Richard is freed, returns to England, stays 4 months, then goes to France, fights Philip Augustus for 5 more years, dies besieging an insignificant castle over a dispute about a treasure hoard. 41 years old, the Lionheart brought down by an infection from a crossbow wound. withstood 3 Crusader kings, built a dynasty, then dies of fever in Damascus. His empire immediately fractures among his sons and brother. The unity he created disappears, but the treaty holds. His successors honor it. The peace Richard and Saladin negotiated survives them both. Battles, negotiations, all culminating in one dawn on a beach. 80 knights facing 7,000 cavalry. The odds are impossible. Richard forms the line anyway. The hedge of spears, the crossbow volleys, the countercharges. 7 hours of fighting, 700 dead. The Crusader states are saved, the treaty follows, the Third Crusade ends, all because Richard refused to retreat. In excavations of Crusader Jaffa, they find evidence of rushed repairs to fortifications, stone walls hastily rebuilt, breaches filled with rubble. This matches the timeline. Saladin breaches the walls July 30th. Richard retakes the city August 1st. His men patch the walls immediately, not properly, just enough to provide some defense. When Saladin attacks August 5th, Richard cannot rely on the walls. They are compromised. This is why he forms the line outside. The walls will not hold. Better to fight in the open where his crossbowmen and knights can maneuver. The archaeological evidence confirms the strategic situation described in the sources. Marry into local families. Others return to England and France. A few join the military orders, Templars, Hospitallers, Teutonic Knights. These orders continue fighting after the Third Crusade ends. They garrison the coastal fortresses, protect pilgrims, fight skirmishes with Muslim forces. The 26-year peace is relative. Raids and counter-raids continue, but no major campaigns, no new crusades until 1218. The legend of Jaffa grows over the decades. By the 13th century, troubadours are singing about Richard's heroism, the 17 knights who rode against 7,000, the king who fought like a common soldier, the champion cleaved in two with a single blow, the gift of horses from Saladin's brother. These stories spread across Europe. Richard becomes the ideal of chivalric kingship, brave, generous, pious, fighting for God and glory. The reality is more complex. Richard is ruthless, politically inept, brutal when necessary, but also brilliant in battle, personally courageous to the point of recklessness, and pragmatic enough to negotiate peace when war cannot win. Confidence in his own combat skills, willingness to gamble everything on one battle, but also pragmatism. He does not try to destroy Saladin's army, just defeat it enough to force negotiations. The goal is not total victory, it is honorable peace that saves the Crusader states. This is what Richard achieves, not through brilliant strategy, not through overwhelming force, but through tactical genius in a single battle and diplomatic skill in the treaty that follows. Medieval warfare is personal. Men fight hand to hand, see the faces of those they kill. Richard sees this at Jaffa, charges into the midst of enemy cavalry, cuts down men around him. This is not abstract. This is blood on his hands. The itinerarium describes him covered in blood by the end of the battle, not all of it his own. His army loses confidence, 3 days in his tent refusing to see anyone. This is a man broken by defeat. Not permanently, he recovers, negotiates the treaty. But the loss at Jaffa undermines him. His health never recovers. 6 months later, he is dead. Whether the crusade broke his health or simply his time came is debatable, but the timing is striking. Defeats at Jaffa in August, treaty in September, death in March. The stress of war takes its toll. Pilgrims can travel safely. This is success. Not complete, not what they hoped for, but enough. Not to hide the defeat, but to show Saladin's greatness comes not from winning every battle, but from his wisdom and justice. Two kings who recognize when peace serves better than war. The Treaty of Jaffa is their joint legacy, not Jerusalem conquered or defended, but peace negotiated, pilgrims protected, states preserved. This is the real achievement. Carved with the year 1192, and a single word in Latin, survived. Not glorious victory, not crushing defeat. Survived. That is Jaffa. That is the Third Crusade. That is Richard and Saladin both. They survived. Their states survived. The peace survived. For 26 years until the next generation decided to fight again. But on August 5th, 1192, survival was enough. And on that beach, with 17 knights against 7,000 cavalry, Richard earned it.